guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking. Thank you for being here. If you're new, kindly consider subscribing and become a part of this wonderful family. I'm Maria Jens and karibu sana. So today guys, I want us to talk about childhood trauma, and this is very common among people. It's very common. Childhood trauma is the experience of an event by a child that is emotionally painful and very distressful. It is very hurting, and it oftenly results to lasting mental and physical effects. And as I've said, it's very common. The events that happen when you are a child that are probably painful, and so to call like painful memories and hurting memories. And guys, childhood trauma may follow you up to adulthood. Yes. And it might affect you later in life. If not that time, it might affect you when you are an adult. And this is because the hurtful and the painful feelings get suppressed and trapped inside. Hence, they're just there. You might not think you're hurting, but those hurtful moments, hurtful whatever's are there, and you grow up keeping them inside if they're not tackled when you are still a child. Some of the common things that actually lead to childhood trauma are physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, abandonment, neglect, domestic violence, loss of a loved one, an absent parent, bullying, and so on and so forth. These are just but the common. You can always know if your child is developing the trauma at a very young age. But how can you know? What are the red lights that you're supposed to check? Maybe when your child is having trouble sleeping, when they worry excessively about their safety and the safety of others, and especially the safety of the people around them, uh, having difficulty in concentrating, asking questions about death. And this is especially if they had lost a loved one recently, so they keep on asking more about death. So that is to show that something is really traumatizing them. When these kids they try to recreate the traumatic experience while they're just playing outside or something, they're playing, but what they're actually doing is they're recreating the traumatic experience. Another thing is when they feel fear and anxiety, experiencing nightmares, um, repeatedly tell people about the traumatic experience. They keep talking and talking about it all the time. When they feel afraid about that the traumatic event might happen again, so they keep on having fear of an event like that happening again in their life. When they are trying to avoid going to places that bring up those memories, going to the places where the trauma happened or whatever, something that reminds them of that place. um any place that brings those memories or bad trauma to them, they avoid going to such places. Those are just but the red lights that you can actually check out when the child is still at a younger age, just to know if they're developing the trauma, so that maybe you can help them. These are the point where you can actually help them to like overcome it before they get to adulthood, where it will become a very bad trauma with the negative effects, because as I've told you, it brings up lasting mental illnesses. So one way to avoid is just to look out for this. If your child has gone through a traumatic experience, if they've gone through something that you feel like is like traumatizing them, the best time to look at to help them is when they are very at a younger age, and when you see those red lights that are actually pointed to you. So if that stage is bypassed, if the childhood trauma is not tackled when the person is still young. I've told you it follows you to adult, and this doesn't mean that the pain will just automatically go. No, it follows you to adulthood, and it's a very hard trauma, because as I've said, this is where the feelings have been suppressed inside, so they have been trapped inside, and they might be triggered by anything. Those hurtful moments living the inner child who is still hurting, is not healed, is still living in you. Inside you lives an inner child who is still hurting and wants to be healed. So as an adult, how do you know if you have suppressed childhood trauma? Number one, when you have strong and unexplained reaction to certain people. What do I mean by this? You may be meeting somebody or some people for the very, very first time in your life, and for some reason you immediately feel off about them. Feel off about them. It could be this person or these people are reminding you of the same person or people who caused you the trauma when you were a child. You might actually, for example, if you had gone through a sexual abuse as a young girl, so maybe you had a man who had actually caused you that who sexually abused you. When you grow up, you might be seeing men, and you obviously feel off about these men because they remind you of the man who abused you. So whatever trauma you're going through, you might come across other people, and they remind you of the people who caused you the trauma, because these people, you're meeting them for the first time and you're just feeling off. That is number one. Number two, lack of ease in certain places. Mostly when you're faced with trauma, when you're still a child, your brain made notes. Yes, it made notes of the smell, the color, the sound, everything about that place, whatever happened in that place, your mind made notes. So when you go to certain places, when you go to similar places, to places like similar to the ones to where you are actually traumatized, this might bring you uneasiness. You just don't feel is being at that place. It is just a reminder somewhere down in your mind. It is reminding you of the similar place where you got traumatized, hence feeling unease in certain places. Number three is that extreme emotional shifts. You are not able to keep up with the mood. You just get angry suddenly. You can't keep up the mood. You are either happy right now, and the next minute you're angry, the next minute you so much emotional shifts. Number four, attachment issues, and this one is very, very common. If you're having some childhood trauma suppressed inside, this one, attachment issues becomes a problem. Mostly, you may not want to be associated with people, you may not want to be attached to anyone at all, simply because you fear you because of the fear of being neglected, the fear of being left, the fear of being jilted. So you don't want to be attached to people, you don't want to feel that attachment at all. And this mostly happens when you had been neglected or rejected when you were a child. This one is very, very common. You might find yourself you having attachment issues. You simply don't want to get attached to any people. You'd rather be alone. You'd rather be alone than to be with people, to risk being left. In other words, what you don't want to do is to risk anything. You don't want to risk being rejected, being jilted, being left, being abandoned. So you want to stay alone and don't not be attached to anything. Number five is that you are unable to cope with the normal stressful situations. Stress is very, very common in adults, but when you have repressed childhood trauma, it makes it more difficult to deal with stressful situations. Just small stressful situation, you're not able to cope with it. Most cases, you'll rather hide. You'll rather run away from the problem. You'll rather not solve any problem. Okay, when you're faced with this stressful situation, you'll rather not solve anything. You'll rather not act on it. You'll rather leave it the way it is than talk about it, than deal with it, because you are afraid, because you don't believe you can cope with it. You are just not able to cope with small or normal stressful situations. This can affect you negatively. This childhood trauma can actually affect you very, very negatively in life. As a child, as an adult now, childhood trauma leads to so many negative effects. And one, it brings up low self-esteem, difficulty in social interaction. You are not a social, you'll never be a social person. You depressed, anxiety, anger, feelings of shame and guilt, trouble controlling emotions, mental health issues, eating disorder, substance use. Yes, you might get into drugs, you might get into some bad addictions, fear of being judged, and outburst of frustrations. You're not able to accept yourself. You just feel off about life. You just feel off about yourself. You're just not okay. And you have like so much anxiety. Anxiety is very bad. You're just not there. The negative effects that comes out with childhood trauma are very bad. Because let me tell you, you can be normal, you can be looking okay, you can be okay as you're seeing yourself and people are seeing you and all that. But the inner child that is still hurting will not let you live in peace until you deal with her. Until you deal with the inner child that is living inside, you can never be at peace, because the negative effects are so many. Well, guys, in most cases, childhood neglect is affects a lot, many people. Childhood neglect affects many people. This is mostly done by parents. Yes, you might have, when you were a child, maybe you had a parent who had childhood trauma that was not yet dealt with. Your parent probably had an inner child who was yet to be healed. So, in most cases, if you had a parent who had childhood trauma that was not dealt with, it is definitely passed on to a child. It was definitely passed on to you. And they obviously did not pass it to you unknowingly. It is from a parent to a child, from unconscious mind to unconscious mind, because your parent did not deal with a childhood trauma. He or she passed the trauma to you. So it's always good and healthy to deal with the with unresolved childhood issues, childhood pains, childhood trauma, to avoid the continuity of the same. If you don't deal with your childhood trauma today, you might pass it on to your child tomorrow. So it's very important and very, very healthy. Let us learn to deal with our childhood issues so that we don't pass them to our children. um when you have already healed from a childhood trauma, you are able to deal with your children. So definitely, if you have dealt with your inner child that was hurting, you'll be able to deal with your children and not instill hurtful feelings for them to avoid continuity of the same. Just deal with childhood trauma for fast, for you, for yourself, for your children, for your family, and for the people around you. Very, very good and very, very healthy. So many people, as I've said, are suffering from childhood trauma. A lot of people, like in 10 people, 7 of them are suffering from childhood trauma. Believe you me. And you might be having this childhood trauma, and it's just that you're not realizing it. Mostly we tend to hide this feeling inside us, and we are like, I dealt with it. You're like, I'm okay. You're like, I'm good. You're like, you might even be talking about it, that I went through hell, I went through sexual abuse, I went through whatever, I was abandoned, I was neglected, I was done all those kind of stuff, but I overcame. But you may not know. You might be having outbursts of frustrations. You might be having an emotional breakout because of the same, and you might not be realizing it. Just look out for the for the points that I've actually given you to know, just to know if you are actually have unresolved issues, childhood trauma, childhood pain that are still inside. Because hey, guys, we need to heal that inner child. Let's heal our inner children, let them heal so that we can be okay even as in adulthood. So if you're there and you have just realized that you've been having childhood trauma, or rather you knew that you've always had childhood trauma, I want to give you ways on how to heal that inner child. Ways on how to heal that inner child. Number one, acknowledge and recognize the trauma for what it is. Acknowledge and recognize the trauma for what it is. Because, guys, it is what it is. It is, okay? Don't dismiss it. Mm-mm. Don't dismiss it by pretending like it never happened. Don't dismiss it at all. Don't succumb to feeling of guilt and shame. Feelings of guilt and self-shame. Just acknowledge that yes, it did happen, and you know what? I am not responsible for it. That is point number one. Number two, reclaim control. Don't make choices based on your past pain. Okay, mostly this happens. We tend to make choices and decisions based on our past pain. We are Just let it go. Don't make decisions, don't make choices based on your past pain, because let the past remain in the past. Don't let the past control your present. Yes, don't let the past control your present or even your future. It is in the past, and you don't make choices and decisions based on it. Let it remain there. Don't let it ruin your future, because when you let it make the choices in your future, you let it control your present or your future, you're doomed. Number three, don't isolate yourself. Ooh, this is deep, guys. Don't isolate yourself. Mostly, when you've been faced with a lot of this kind of stuff, all you want is to isolate yourself. You just want to be alone. You don't want people around you. Like, you feel like people are irritating you. You feel like people are so boring. You feel like people are not good anymore. So don't isolate yourself. You might actually be tempted to withdraw from others. Yes, you might be tempted to withdraw, but this will only make things worse for you. It will only make things worse for you. So don't isolate yourself. Instead, connect with other people. Connect with more positive people. A big part of healing process is connecting with other people. It might seem like a small thing, but let me tell you, the biggest part of healing process is connecting with other people, and especially positive people, positive minded people. Connect with them instead of isolating yourself. Number four, learn the true meaning of acceptance and letting go. Now this is the hardest part. It's not like embracing your trauma. No, it's not embracing like your trauma. It's about accepting what it is and deciding what to do with it. Yes, accepting and deciding what to do with it. The decision is yours. The decision is in your hands. You are the only one who has the decision to make. You can decide to let it rule rule your life, or let it go. Yes, you can decide to let it rule you. You can decide to let it control you. You can decide to let it kill you, or you can just decide to let it go. And the best thing you can ever do is to decide to let it go. It's more like no longer allowing bad memories, bad feelings, bad hurtful things, distressful things of your childhood to rub you over good future, of a good and perfect life, peaceful life. Don't allow it to rob you of a peaceful life that you can actually have now. Number 5, replace bad habits with good ones. you know, uh, what I mean here is that notice all the negative habits that you have, because as you have been I've told you, when you get into this childhood trauma, you might have negative effects, negative things happening in your life and negative issues and all that. Identify all those negative habits that you've actually accumulated, the negative effects that have come out with the childhood trauma and all that. Start eliminating them, one by one, and replacing them with the good ones. Okay, uh replace them, stay focused, and also positive stay positive. Don't dwell there. Like, all the negative effects, they are very bad. If you continue with the bad effects, the mad negative attitude, you might never heal. You might never heal having negative attitude. Put out the positive energy, the positive attitude for you to be healed. Number 6, take care of your health. By this I mean, take care of yourself. um take care Taking care of your health. Mostly when we are faced with this trauma, we become depressed, so we lose ourselves. We don't take care of ourselves, we don't take care of our sanity, we are just not there. You need to take care of your sanity, need to take care of your health. Don't involve yourself in drugs. Try to control yourself, control stress, and that way you're going to stay healthy. Because for you to be healed completely from a childhood trauma, you need to be healthy. Okay? Number 7, be patient with yourself. Now, I think this is the hardest, being patient with yourself. Mostly, this is the hardest part. But let me tell you guys, it might take a very, very long time and hard work to eventually let go. Yes, it's not easy. I'm not gonna tell you that it's gonna be a bed of roses. No, it's gonna be a very tough journey. Gonna be it will take a long time and a lot of hard work to let go of these feelings. So just be patient with yourself and honor your progress. Okay, honor your progress, no matter how small it is, no matter how small it may seem. It's your progress. And it's the little victories, it's the little achievements in your recovery that will count. Okay, it's about the victories you make, no matter how small, the little victories, the little achievements, those small, no matter how they may seem. Honor your progress. um, you can eventually help you win the battle. It will help you win the battle in healing, in your child trauma. You can heal completely, but honor your progress and trust the process. Don't look at it and think it's so slow. No, honor that process, because hey, you are a brave person. Just being patient with yourself means that you are a brave person, and if you're willing to be healed, trust the process. Just be kind to yourself, and don't be hard on yourself. While dealing with the inner child, just be kind with yourself. Remember that inner child is hurting. That inner child is just hurting and crying for help, and you're there. You are the one who's going to deal with the inner child. You are now an adult, but you need to remember that inner child, because you and the inner child are one. Okay, so if the inner child is hurting, you're also hurting. But when you deal with the inner child, you will be fine. So if you like this video, kindly like, share with your friends and family, and kindly keep it here, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I love you so much, guys. See you in my next video.